Hello, world. I want to start off by apologizing for kind of taking off. I made an executive decision, of course without telling anyone, to take the month of December off to enjoy the Christmas season. So, I'm sorry, but I hope you enjoyed the break anyway. Enjoying Christmas, enjoying time with family, enjoying presents, enjoying New Year's. World Juniors. I want to say enjoying. No, somehow that doesn't feel right. I don't want to talk about it. But even without the World Juniors, there were plenty of other things to talk about in December. So, here we go. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and welcome back to the Penalty Box. Woo! Alright, let's just start with the obvious. The Leafs' record over the month of December. Let me just tell you the numbers. The Leafs played 13 games over the month of December, losing 9. You can tell by now how this is gonna go, can't you? You know, I'm tempted to skip over a whole rant on this, but there's one thing I can't help but comment on. Did anyone aside from me notice that every post-game interview with the Leafs was the same? We know who we are, we know what we need to do to win, we didn't do that tonight. That was the mantra of the Leafs over the whole month of December. But I'm sorry, do you not realize how frustrating it is to hear half-assed junk like that as a fan? I mean, yeah, getting away from your identity, getting thrown off your game, it makes sense once or twice, it happens in the heat of the moment. But 9 out of 13 times? Sure, nobody ever accused athletes of having good interviews, but really? But as for the losing streak as a whole, what in the world happened here? I mean, thank God we found a way to string a few wins together. Because if we hadn't, after having a hot start and being first in the league, we still would have been out of playoff position by the halfway point. And you can blame this slump on poor goaltending, bad defense, Kuhlman's scoring drought, Jimmy Hoffa, whatever you want. But the plain fact is that this team as a whole wasn't playing good. Moving on before I have a coronary. Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment were bought by Bell and Rogers in a major deal in mid-December, buying out the Ontario Teachers Pension Fund. Meaning that the three owners are now Bell, Rogers, and Larry Tannenbaum, each owning about a third of the company. Now, what this means for you? The two companies that own TSN and Sportsnet just bought the Leafs. So the broadcast schedules don't change, and now two different faceless corporations own the team. In equally unremarkable news, the world continues to turn and gravity continues to operate downwards. True, Bell and Rogers spokespeople hinted at the possibility of making the games available on your smartphone, because that's the size hockey fans want to watch the game at. Scored! I think. A third storyline that caught my eye and ire this month, NHL realignment. At the Board of Governors meeting in December, the owners voted on and approved a new format for the league and playoffs consisting of 4 conferences, 2 with 8 teams and 2 with 7 teams, instead of the current format of 2 conferences with 15 teams apiece. The conferences basically take the place of the divisions, with the top 4 teams from each making the playoffs, which totally makes sense for the conferences of 8 teams when compared with the conferences of 7 teams. Yep, I can totally see why the owners of those teams will want less chance of making the playoffs than they currently have. So, for us Leafs fans, here's how it works out. In our conference, we have Boston, Buffalo, Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, Florida, and Tampa Bay. So basically, the Northeast Division plus the state of Florida. Makes sense to me, says no one. My biggest question in this situation is, why? Why do you need to replace a system that has worked quite well for quite a few years now? I mean, sure, the present system isn't perfect, but it works. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. This was supposedly set up to solve the problems created by Winnipeg crossing back over to the Western Conference, but it just feels to me like you're chopping down the door because of a squeaky hinge. Here's your solution. Take Winnipeg, move them to the Western Conference. Then take Detroit, who geographically speaking has no business being in the Western Conference anyway, and move them east. There, done. You're welcome. I mean, sure, it might seem weird at first to change the conference Detroit's in, but it's not like it hasn't been done before. The Leafs moved from the West to the East back in the early 90s. It's not the end of the world. All I can say is thank God the NHLPA blocked it. For now, at least. And on to my final topic, Brian Burke is making waves again. Just recently, our GM had to place the first man he signed to the Toronto Maple Leafs, Colton Orr, on waivers. And as he waved a tearful goodbye to his enforcer, he lashed out at what he called a lack of player accountability. Basically, he said that rats had taken over the league and that players were free to cheap shot each other without fear of retribution from the other team's tough guy. And I can't say I disagree with him. Look at our league today. I would bet any money that you could name at least 3 people who had built their career on cheap shots. The 3 that spring to my mind? Daniel Carcillo, Steve Downey, and, of course, Sean Avery. Do you think players like that would have existed back in the 80s and the early 90s? A Sean Avery type would have been pummeled to a bloody pulp if he tried even half the garbage he gets away with. But now with the fighting going away, you can do whatever to whoever and nobody makes you back it up. I mean, sure, I could do without the mandatory fight each game where the 2 tough guys start talking at each other off the face-off circle and go at it for no reason. But you need your policemen out there to keep the peace, and sometimes that can't be done by the ref. I mean, honestly, do you think Wayne Gretzky would have had as long and successful a career without Marty McSorley there to protect him? Anyway, boys and girls, that's all I got for this week. Not a very cheerful blog, I admit, but hey, the Leafs are still in a playoff spot. Something we usually haven't been able to say around this time each year. Hey, I'll be back next week! Maybe.